Flights, navigation lines, and manifest anything through the console or in location settings, space modulation, screen lines, high centers, hardware track interference locations. Getting communication lines and flying a plane is totally different because the set position travel line has limited access. The position travel line goes from one place to the next. Know exact where it goes from in position location arrival to departure. But in dimension lines of high center interference, you can do anything in equation lines and be anything in track locations, but you have to send with all different levels of navigating your settings. You can also do through your vessel communications. You can vortex, time jump. You can go through jump scar. I mean, there's so many things that you can do, right? In the difference in position location, you just got to on a plane and fly. You have a seating arrangement in some location lines of 3 levels into 3 rows, right? But the position of your vessel can do whatever it wants in travel because it's in positions of all levels of being into existence and non-existence. Planes, non-existence of planes. Planes itself is all understanding position how to get in correlations of your highways. Highways are set up in your position to location settings. Understand how to understand that through space modification, space modulations, and space identification. Understand how to use that through Tango Tango. Puts everything in information lines of balance. And balance puts you in a Voltronic location. How to really understand how to communicate with each other through intercon. Intercon helps you and always informs how to connect with yourself through your own vessels of communication through telepathy. Using your telepathy line signals and application puts you in a lines of communication setting to understand how to navigate your system better when you go into remote attractions. Waving line cycles, let's go through line screens and direct signals and position lines of travel. Okay. Let's get into configuration lines. Okay, let's go through correlation. All right, and you see it get bigger and bigger and bigger. All right. Direct lines of sight sets lines of communication to its position at all levels. Operate the signal location setting to a Stargate. Stargate opens all screen lines, adaptation lines, highest interference. Now it's totally different when you see a runway in track location, right? See the pyramid line? Now you split lines of anomaly into 3-line splinter that sets lines of communication to a system, all levels of console. Console communicates line screen, crosses line screen lines at all levels across the signals. Remember it's telling you about the location grid? Well, there's where location grid comes in traction. There's where location grid comes in location, all right, interactions. Setting lines of communication this way, setting line communication, crossing line settings in this way in track locations. Direct calculation lines of highest interference and position of volume, puts lines of communications going through track location. Okay, this is a runway. So you have to understand how the higher self has to really understand the cross-referencing of signals when it comes into string theory. Process communication from here travels right through. Process communication from here cross line travels through in set locations. So it's a direct lines of setting. Okay, it operates the signal location system. So where you're going from indication is all levels of mapping sequence that puts all levels of line position location it travels. Then it goes into security, into realms of communication. Okay, very powerful stuff, right? So getting that position cross-reference to the signals and opens up all levels, puts lines in position your senses. You have your internal and you have your external in set location, right? But this is a runway, okay? Process communication lines of highest interference crosses line signals in position location setting. But look how powerful that is in traction just by seeing that and setting, all right? All right, so direct lines of correlation, X2000 comes in 2 panels of communication. Process calculation line screens, high adaptation lines of service. Sets position locations 1 cycle. Sets communication lines of 2 cycles. It's application of travel. Okay. Direct lines of communication, highest interference. Opens up the portal in the line position to its location. Opens up the line centers and all lines of high center interference that routes the system in correlations to its setting of travel. Okay. Also 2, location grid, cross-reference the signals, goes to inhibitors over screen, indirect lines into location grids, and set calculation lines of travel and mechanism. Very powerful stuff. So once that's set up, the calculation setting, let's say the higher self comes in, sees all settings, navigations, manifest, consoles, simulators all set, ready to go, right? Travels through, right? Gets ready on platform here. There's a platform here to go in position to get ready into the Stargate. Stargate sets lines of communication lines sending to its operation surface of its set locations. So gets in position, travels here, crosses line screen, teleports lines on highest interference into all levels. This puts lines of the cerebral cortex, lines of the cerebellum in set location, ready to travel through the Stargate at set location. Okay, very powerful. Look at this. Turn this into a Stargate. Okay, that's what it is in tractions, right? Opens up the signals, right? So as you're going through the process communication, again, it goes through a 45 line setting in position to its operation surface and track location, right? But that's how your highways are set up. Okay, you understand how to go through all this to create it through its cross-referencing signals to create the portals and stargates and wormholes in positional platforms as set calculation. Okay, all right. Direct lines of communication, you have to really understand how to use yourself and remote. It puts everything in position of balance. Balance is everything, all right? So let's go through line conditions of box frames. Okay, so we'll do line communication settings into highways. Let's start with attractions, right? 3 split lines of anomaly, okay? Then we got 2 central line calculation setting, right? Perspectives, right? All right, look at this, in travel correlation, okay? So the center position is here and opens up the signal. Remember, it's not positioned going this way, it's coming this way, right? So everything is coming direct to you. That's a direction, right? Not a direction. Now, to travel through inline setting in a future adaptation is line communication settings are going forward and at 3 line split lines of communication. Process calculation line screens opens all levels of travel position. Communicates line settings into electrical line communication to its position. Process calculates line screens highest interference in line communications of programs and set location. Setting communication line screens high adaptation lines of surface. Process communication line setting highlights all levels of highest location. Process communication line screens highest interference puts all levels of volume and set location. Okay, that's how it's set up. Cross signals, cross platforms. So you got to really understand the representation when it comes into a hologram, right? So we go into the red line cycles. We'll go with the box frames. All right, let's go with this line condition settings. All right, so I'll just show you how this all comes together into the simulator of the simulation of your system. Start with that calculations, right? All right, so let's go through this line. Let's just color it the lines of panels here, electrical line walls. The more you see yourself in line setting location system, you see the 2-second rule, right? You always see things ahead of schedule, all right? You never see anything in precog, especially when everything is setting positions, all levels. All the nothing is everything is showing of everything in traction locations. It gets to direct line signals. Now you can set split lines of communication to its anomaly, sets lines of communication setting position of its program that puts lines of time frame, puts lines of communication setting in position of process and travels in correlation lines of track location. Okay? 2-dimensional line walls. That's cross line signals. Okay, so it's all about creating platforms into holographic design lines, puts all levels of process and communication setting to grounds. Got to get your grounds, your powers, and your atmospheres. Once you get into that position location to its system, everything comes in track location to its settings. The operation system puts everything in calculations in process communication. All right? Knowing exactly how to use your time frames, your time locks, high center interference, freezing space, locking space, timelines, editing space, space editing space, locking space, correlation space, freezing space, time interference of space, track location of space, and travel. Okay? All right, so it gets very confusing, but you always see it not on a 1-line screen. You see it on a 4-line split lines of communication interference, of travel point lines of graph calculation line settings, on a 4-line wave and line cycle, line rotation, surface attraction. Okay, so direct lines of communication setting opens all cycles. Now, position of process opens up the portal. Line setting and going forward and track location line setting to its operation surface. Process communication lines of realms puts all communication setting going forward and track location. Directs lines of signals, cross-line connections, but it's very powerful when you come in position locations. So there's so many ways of looking at this through tractions and navigation. It's all levels of space modulation screens. Direct lines of highest interference. So the 45 line setting, which is a split lines of anomaly, right? 45% line communication setting. 45 different line of angles and line communication data highways. The track provision lines of the space modulation, 3 track line provisions into space line setting. That puts all communication settings that travels in direct signals of communication line center location to its realms of communication. Very powerful stuff, right? So you can see it from this way, but also you can see it from a bird's eye view looking down, right? See? Bird's eye view looking down, right? Comes into an energetic dome, right? It's all about changing communication lines of programs. Let's go through green lines and position locations and setting. Okay, process calculations. But it's very powerful how you can turn data highways to anything information. So it's about understanding you have a highway, but you can also turn it into something else in position. You can add pyramid lines, you can add square communications, you can add cubical line screen adaptations, other highway track locations. You can set infrastructures of here, 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 and here. All levels are set location, line, center, location, and time frame. Okay. Provision lines attractions, but it's very powerful when you come in this setting. How to set up through the cross-referencing and position locations from all lines and location from portals and stargates and wormholes. How it sets up the platforms and how you go through stargates. Okay, very powerful. And you can see the intelligence. This is the intelligence right here that you're dealing with. All right. So the intelligence is already on the other side line, which is in the planet line surface that sets position location as travels, waiting line communication to its setting, all information location system, in track location of communication. It processes lines of application settings and travel point lines of graphs. There's the intelligence. Boom. Right? So getting that position location, things get a lot more easier when you understand platforms of travel, especially when you come to space modification centers. Okay, so let's go through time frame lines of 1 and track locations of platforms. Okay, so I'm going to set up a platform and show you exactly what it looks like. There's a platform, right? All right, so split lines anomaly, 3 track location provision. All right, so I'm just showing you exactly how platforms are set up in space anomaly. Okay, come in track location lines of provision location of cycles and track location. All right, in position all levels, XT1000 comes in, sets communication settings, open all attractions, open all divisions, opens all portals, line setting, wormholes, line position location of half pipe. Okay, process communication lines of grounds, sets communication lines of program location setting, and a downshift anomaly and platforms going downshift lines of screen location adaptation. Process calculation lines going this way in track locations and 3 platforms of communication. Process communication going this way in a 4-line communication, split lines of 3 lines of navigation lines application. Process communication cross line high center interference of reference in positional platforms going to high correlation setting northeast and set location. Okay, so there's so many ways to set up highways. You're constantly changing seconds, minutes, and hours of time frame, right? So that's how General was able to lock the signals lines to high center interference in position of freezing lines of space in between each lines of second, minutes, and hours. It's amazing what you can do through time zone. It's all about understanding how your time communicates and setting. Are you using space zones, time zones, correlation zones, communication zones, compute screen line zones, high center interference zones, commission zones, high correlation zone, planet zones, line center high interference, runway zones, all communicates position lines of high position of frames. Direct lines, modification lines of data highways, core track interference, high position programs. Direct lines of signals in position locations, all line communication of colossal, correlate the track interference in direct signals and modification line cycles of generation screens. Direct modification line, high center interference, and travel point lines of graph into center core system as the sun and the moon waits on signals of platforms, communication setting of programs application. See? It's amazing when you come into the lines of creation, all levels of information lines that you guys come in your muscle memories and track locations, right? So everything has a hub. Now, hub lines at screen line. Let's go through line communication square rooms. Let's go into platforms of communication grounds. All right, let's set up business locations, right? You got the energetic dome, right? That's this application. 1 cycle, 2 cycle, 3 cycle, line condition setting, 4 cycle, line condition setting. But to bring it out, you got to go into circulation rotation. Okay. Now bring that platform in position line brings 1 cycle, 1 center, 1 operation surface. In line condition setting and process communication line, ground lines, crosses line, crystals, line setting, and platforms of communication. Process calculates line direct signals, puts all communication lines of platform in position lines of center of operation surface and track location line system in calculation. Okay, all right. XC1000 comes in here, docks the system lines of travel, point lines of graph, scans the centers, always in the center position, always scans, right? Picks up sonar lines, direct lines, high formation lines, screen adaptation lines of surface. Process communication line, crosses line signals, laser traction, laser direct location is solar grids, solar centers, high information lines, webbing system, track locations, center communication setting of programs. Direct lines of modification, center line interference, solar track position locations. Energized lines, screen line adaptation, high center interference, program set locations, high calculations, coloration lines of pattern, coloration line in rotation, track line communication setting. Blue lines, let's go to metric meter lines of scales, bounce communication lines of program communication setting, high travel point lines of graph communication lines, high center interference, simulator line communication lines and navigation lines of console, line communication setting, position of process communication lines, center interference, Coming to cloak and dagger. Cloak and dagger. Lines of 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, settings of track location provision. Select lines, highest interference at time sequence, times calculation, times pi, and track location. Now it's coming out. All right. So everything here is coming out. Everything that's on standby, right? So you really have to understand what you want to communicate. See, you see that? Look at that. Boom. That's amazing how it comes in traction. See? All right. So at center lines is communication setting, right? Sets up tether. Now go to the course line setting. That opens all signals. Let's go into black line screens, dark lines modification. Track course lines of track centers puts everything into black cycles. Line condition setting position is program. So sets lines, communication line, highest center location, line conditions, all. Let's go green lines, correlation lines of 3 panels, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 set locations. Travel point lines of graph. Let's go into lines of purple. Purple lines in 1 cycle, 1 center, 1 operation surface, and all line communication triangulation position of programs set calculation. All right. Then we go into psychops, direct lines of panels into levels of tunnel line, defense lines, screen lines, adaptation lines, of course, track locations. Process calculation line screens, highest interference. Now, getting into highways is really, really important to understand through travel, mechanisms, and high calculations. Let's go through seconds lines of a screen. Very complicated stuff, isn't it? The drawing gets more complicated, but gets a lot more fun, but you have to understand the geometrics of its highways, because the highways can go from here to here to here to here, right? So remember adjustment bureau, where you see the sequence lines, the screen lines, adaptation lines, the surface traveling. Points lines of graph this way indicates this way. Oh, we're going to change this way and travel. Nope, we're going to go this way and travel. And position lines of point lines of graphs, right? So that's communication highest interference. Crossing line reference. That single lines opens up its location grid. Location grid goes in this way, and center lines up communication. Process calculation lines, security line, events lines, highest interference, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. ROM holes and portals and correlation lines attractions. Direct lines of signals. Arrow indicates cross line signals, line communication to its position of the program. Setting up another location grid in the cross line overcross in position location to its setting through travel. Points lines of graph in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines and 12 in position of point lines of graph. Position lines of programs, direct lines of portals, stargates, line screen, over line position, over traction, over directions, over location setting capsules. Direct calculation lines, high cross line signals, into line condition setting, and process calculation screen lines adaptation. Process communication highest interference, but it's all communication setting position of program. All through a highway, all through process, all through communications. All right. All right. The center core system of travel is all direct signals how you use your time frame sequence. It puts all communication setting at all levels of high center. Okay. Process your position location. So let's go through 17 line squares in position of process. So we got 17 lines equals lines of 1, equals lines into echo. Okay. In line centers of 1 chamber. Okay, because you got to be identification lines, and you got your pip and your graph, your point lines, and you in the center, right? That's you right there in flight navigation in center core. That's you in the center right there, right? So you got 3 central line centers from here. Let's go through traction, location, division, process calculations, open null signals. So this is you in a mapping sequence, all right? You are in the center operation right here, right on the dot, right? So this is that. Okay, so it's in a 17 line square. Equals lines of correlations and setting position north, east, west, and south. Sets correlation lines of time frame, line direct signals, and modification line screen. Process calculation 1 center, 1 operation surface, and set location at center. Process calculation lines doing XT1000 that sets lines of communication and measure. Balance lines, screen lines, adaptation lines at 3 line cycles, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 locations. Process communication ground lines, 45-degree angles, and a 4-line split lines of 5 set location. Process calculation line crosses line signals. Cross-referencing, guys. Cross-referencing on a 4-line split lines of 8. Lines of 9, 10, 11, and 12 set locations. Okay? Process communication lines, box frame, line condition setting to pi of generation screen lines on setting. Setting communication lines of solar sail, line rotation surface, and track location. All through a 17 graph screen. 17 graph screen, 1 line signal, 1 line position, all levels of an echo chamber lines of 1 frame, 1 line setting, 1 operation surface. Process communication line setting puts all levels of communications. Setting lines of rounds, setting lines of communication process, line centers, high set location of travel. Okay. All right. So this comes out through equation. Center communications, operation cycles. Okay, ground centers, operation line conditions. So understand how to use your flight navigations to your manifest, gets a lot of communication, how to use it through space simulators and track applications. Comes out provision, let's add line conditions of green, center core system, and travel, right? Comes out through equation, center lines and settings, opens all signals, open calculation modification to a system. All through traction, see? All right, so it's amazing how you see things set up all through platform, right? So I can change the lines of time frame into files. I can change it into highways. I can change it into data. I can change it to an algorithm. I can change it to a binary. Remember, letters, numbers, and shapes can change anything in its formations, but it's for you to understand, not for the numbers, letters, shapes, and symbols. That's already done through its equation. What you have to understand is how to use your equations that you already have, that you already manifest in position of flights, in position of console, in positional cases, in your settings and navigation. All right. But it's very powerful when you come in that track location. All right. All right. Setting sequence of line screens puts everything in an operation line as a vessel. Now that vessel communicates to a system. Let's go through track calculations. Now we're going to go through 21 cycles into 17 tractions. Where is that in time? Nowhere. 21 cycles equals lines of correlation, lines of high center interference. Setting line communicates in setting. Now we're going to change 15 line of volume. 15 here in traction, 17 equals lines of 3 in line rotation surface. Sets communication high center interference into all loads. We take the 2 and the 1 and track calculations, and we add it to 50 line screens in a box frame in a frame line setting. Process communications offline signal, cross-referencing through the center core system of travel calculation. Process communication line settings, put 21 line cycles in high rotation surface in a correlation lines of a blip in line rotation calculations of a capsule set calculation. Direct calculation lines of one cycle, one center, one surface, one triangulation line position its program, and an XT1000 rotation surface and traction inside calculation. Right? That my equation. Right? At any time, did you see anything through time? No. So that's what you guys have to get into measure and scale. You have to get out of the equations how you see time. You got to understand how to modify that through your own time sequence, right? So 22 minutes and 32 seconds, right? You can change that to 22 volume centers into position of 3 seconds over 7 minutes. You can do whatever you want, but you have to understand what you're doing through time frame, time zone, okay? Time frame, time zone. Time edits the space, opens out cycles, line communications, bending space in the modulation screens. Opening up lines of calculation space in modification line screens. High calculate and modify, taking 14 lines of volume, 3 lines of sectors, set lines of correlation. You can go back in time and position lines of high center interference, wait on 10 seconds, 3 minutes, and 2 line cycles. At what point of time did you see me in position time frame in correlations? All going back in time. That puts lines of position, offline calculation setting, into your line communication setting, and vessels of communication. Bandwidth correlation settings, extremely important through line settings, strict line correlation settings, split line, anomaly line, and 3-line sector correlation. Track provision line cycles, one center. Okay, process calculation, one center, one interference, and one position, one center. Process calculation lines of flywheel, track location line setting, operation cycles, in an 8-cent location setting. Process communication lines of center, operation of surface, and track location line connections, high position of its program. Direct modification line signals, high center interference, and position of split lines of anomaly at 3 separate locations. Process calculation, governor lines, circle lines, program lines, center communication lines of crop circles, and set calculation. That's my equation, right? Off the modulation. All right. So you have to really understand how to set up your platforms, your highways, and everything on stat. Process communication, 1 cycle, 2 cycles, 3-line center rotation. Then you have your PIP here that's already set up in triangulation here, goes from here, and it goes from here, right? So that is this, right? Up close communication lines, screen lines, adaptation equals lines of correlation lines of graph, in position location, echo chamber, taxi highways, and line position locations, tango, foxtrot, high position. Puts lines of communication setting process of 1 position, 2, 3, and 4 settings of travel. Process communication lines of grounds, position of powers, and atmospheres, and line sending location to 1 atom rotation, surface, and traction. Direct modification line cycles, line conditions high position program, in a 3-line split line of anomaly. Travel point lines of graph, solar sail, travel line settings, direct signals modification lines, high center location system, and travel calculation modification to a cycle. Direct modification ground centers, 3 lines of split lines, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 line communication. Process calculation ground centers, 1 positional off line cycles, line condition setting, in positions, program, and calculation. It's all loves the travel. Okay, so I really want you to understand how to use this lines of the PIP in graph calculation, screen lines adaptation, and how to use it through its formula of its manifest and set position of flight navigations into your escapes, calculate and modify in track location settings and modulation. All right, all through simulators. All right, but see how complicated it is through travel and position of point lines of graphs. Okay, all through modulation. Binary communication lines of screen is all over the communication setting. Once you understand how to use your platforms, your foundations, your cities, your position of your vessel gets a lot more calculated and modified. Let's go through box frames. Let's go through triangulation frames. Let's go through the Fibonacci frames. Let's go through 3 weather frames in position, right? Correlate to high center interference in 1, 2, and 3 lines of cycles. Position lines of 1, 2, into 3, 4 lines of cycles. Process communication high center interference in position 1, 2, 3 platforms. Position lines of 1, 2, 3, 4 platforms. Split lines anomaly of 43. 43 equals lines of pi generates a communication setting and acceleration line screen, allocates time frame, time box, time measure. Process communication lines of graph communication lines, allocate position time frame, locking sequence in a Schumann resonance and travel, and point lines of graph, and a Fibonacci line screen, high adaptation lines of service, 3 weather panels and line rotation setting and correlation setting and ground line surface and track location. Done by equation. All right. Measure and countability is all about online setting. Now, all position, location, travels, points, lines, and graphs. Okay, so let's go through modulation screens now. We'll go through this position, location setting into a line condition setting, right? Location grid, cross-arc referencing, right? Platforms of communications. Platform 1, platform 2, platform 3, platform 4. Okay? Here's the position, location setting in travel. Okay, that's you, right? So you go from here to here to here to here, right? And then you set up another data highway, cross line screens, and you open up a portal of communication setting to go through, right? Process communication to a Stargate that opens all signals, location, your settings, and travel. Now it comes in this position to its location. It comes in this position to its location. Okay, there you go, solar directions. So I'm just trying to get you guys to understand how this all works in position of process, right? Questions are after, okay, through Q&A. Okay, position lines of highest interference is all over the program setting location of your system, how you see this through equation. All right. Waving cycles, how to use your hand formation line setting, direct and redirect, right? Patterns, lines, high center location setting, all through graph calculation, screen lines adaptation. Ground centers, all over Fibonacci line condition, box centers, puts lines of 43 equals lines of correlation, lines of pi, generates lines, atmosphere, line screen, high center interference, waving cycles, core track interference, high position programs, and calculate lines of data in position AMI or anything to the neural link and correlation lines of traction, all through travel, right? That's why it's very important to keep drawing your structures. Okay, the modification system in all lines of travel puts everything in balance of sequence. Okay, so you have to really understand how to use your echo chambers, your highways, and all lines, high center interference. Taxi highway line in. What does it mean to you through tractions? Because it means something totally different to everybody else, especially with the team. If I said line connection setting, the taxi highway, is it a foundation graph lines of communications for me to understand, or is that for everybody else to understand? You. What does it mean to you? Travels, awareness, X line screen locations and setting. Puts lines of high center interference to its intelligence information of two dots, line conditions, all levels, a dimensional sail and track location. Taxi highway. So that's a DX line 1 rotation center. Process calculation of box frame to X box location. Process calculation, screen lines adaptation, cross line signals, cross reference line communication to location grid that opens the cycle. Process communication offline signal line conditions data highway. All through taxi in high position with program in rotation of center calculation. That's what taxi highway means. All right. Whatever it means to you, it doesn't have to mean everything to everybody else. You got to get out of those equations. Stop getting into titles and stop getting into labels. Okay, of everything, because it offlines your communication and travels. This is the travels. All right. Process of box. This is travel. Okay. This is travel. Okay. Travel, 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 travel. Coming direct to you in set location, all through information. All right. All right. Remember that. remember, it's not traveling is not this way. It's coming back this way. You understand? So you come in this way, it's actually more of the future adaptation bringing you forward and communicates to its setting. Clocking system line setting line interference. Let's set 30 line cycles, 30 communication line screens equals line high interference echo chambers lines of Fox. Lima Fox, correlations Fox, triangulation Fox, direct lines of Fox, modulation Fox, ground lines of Fox, high interference, quantum line communication of flux. Equals lines of correlations of flux and calculation. It's 13 line cycles. Now I'm at 3 lines of volume and 6 lines of measure and 8 line communication of travel, point lines of graphs, and set calculation and position of process. Position lines of center, point lines of graph into DX line rotator, line connections to a box frame, and triangulation position of program. Process calculation lines of 30 in line rotations of 3, 3, 3, 3 in a diamond core shift lines of anomaly. Process calculation line centers operate the signals line communication to its position of its program that sets all communication setting at all levels of 0 line rotation and set calculation. See, there's all different ways to do it through travel. Okay, platforms of setting, process line, elixir, cosmic flame, cosmic fire. Boom. Process calculation 1 ground center, there's a pyramid. Triangulating a 4 line split line anomaly. There's another pyramid over here. Sets correlation lines of 31 track lines, highest interference, and 19 line rotation service, trap point lines, graphic line interference of 14 over 5, line position, 15 over triangulation, 3 lines of measure, correlation lines of pyramid, and 4 line split lines of anomaly. Process calculation line grounds, is a calculation. Process calculation 1 cycle, 1 center, 1 operation surface, and clock location. That my equation. All right. Complicated stuff, right? But it's a lot of fun. Because I set my position location of travels into what I say it is, not what you tell me what it is. You don't tell me the time. Nobody tells you the time because you have time or you have no time. It's like I don't have time to talk to you, but I always will have time to talk to you because it's already set and it's already done, right? So there's really nothing to discuss. The one thing you have to understand is the nothing that shows everything, okay? Process communication lines puts everything in process lines of center, in position of grounds, in position your atmospheres, line communication, magnetic highways, and communication, 3 lines of platforms. Grounds, powers, and atmosphere, splits, line anomaly, line rotation, surface, and track location. Process calculation lines, ground center, high position. Process communication lines of center line interference into Merkaba, set design, and travel. Communication high interference and torque fields, and line rotator, line rotation, surface, and track location lines to an XC1000 to process its communication setting. Direct lines modification. Let's go through the red line cycles. Set communication line and direct signals of modification. All right, scan position lines of travel. I'm going to go through line center, location, cloak and dagger, and track location. Position lines of high calculation plasma screens, direct line modification line cycles of generation. Comes out through equation. See? It's coming out, right? Now it's back, right? So you have to understand how to go through modulation centers. You have to go through space modulation graphs. You have to go through a manifest. You have to go through a mapping sequence. All right. Understand that through coordination line communication to its position, location, and graph calculation lines. Understand the grounds of the Schumann. Understand the powers of the GODs. And understand the atmosphere lines and navigation lines of communication setting to your modification line interference, simulation line communication setting to its simulators. Process communication lines puts everything in all over the platform. So really want you guys to understand that position of the travels, point lines of communications. All right, so we already know what the test is based on. So line conditions of 1 atom, splits lines of communication in 2 atoms, rotates the surface in 3 line rotation setting. Process communication line screens high adaptations in surface and track location. 2 atoms in sequence. 1 center, 1 3 line rotation surface and track location of molecule. Process calculation line interference of proton electrons and diffusion set location. Process communication line screens come to all the levels of adaptation lines of balance. Process communication lines of platforms high center interference in position of XT1000 that travels its position of travel. Points lines of graph communicate the centers, operate the system, location system, but it's all levels of Saturn in set calculation. That's right, Saturn. Boom. Very confusing, right? But when you're bringing in sequence and you're bringing in alpha and delta and theta and omega, you can actually see the formation line in set calculations. All right. All right, so directing lines of signals. We'll bring up the 2 lines tractions of atoms, center location lines of protons, electrons, and diffusion location centers of communication. Process calculated line screens, puts all levels of blue line cycles. Now this puts all levels of electrical line communication position in its program. That's where we come into photons. All right, process calculation lines go for the black line center, puts position of black holes in track location. Direct lines modification, one cycle, one generation, one screen, one center, one interference. Process calculation of line setting, high center location setting, and tube line and tunnel line interference, and colossal calculation, screen lines adaptation. Process communicates high center interference. Position is process lines of tubing and line rotation, surface, and traction. All right, take that out of the equation lines. That's that blue line cycles, blue line system, blue line triangulation, line position of the programs, line condition setting, all through box location. All right. So you have to understand how this position line, this cancels out and this comes in frame, right? So I'm just showing you exactly how this setup is in location setting. It's very complicated stuff when you draw these things, but the process comes in all formation location of one frame to the next in correlation lines of traction. Tracks over line signals, line communication to its position of its program. Okay, so know exactly how that's set up. Pretty powerful stuff, isn't it? But you have to understand black holes. You have to understand dark matter, right? And when I say dark matter, what does it mean to you? Because if you say dark matter, what it is, where's the formula equation that I have? It's no indicator what everybody else has. You formulate your own equations and your own formulas. That's where you come into your own lines of high technology that you already have or vision. If you get a frame communication, let's go through lines of film strips. Okay, there's a film strip lines, cross line signals, and a 45 line split. Platform 1, platform 2, and setting, right? Okay, so you got 2,000 line condition setting, docking, line condition, 2-track location provision, right? Center core line setting, expansion lines of 1, and positional platforms lines of 2. Set correlation lines of platforms lines of 3 in line position. Then you go into 1, 2, 3 set locations, right? Process calculates line grounds, sets lines of security lines measured. Process lines of 1, opens all signals, open all correlation setting, and track location to a setting. Process communication line ground center interference, changes red line cycles in one center, in one position, one process, in a crop circle, line centers a calculation. Done by equation. See? It's knowing how to set up laser grids and sky grid that's already set up in your VR line setting. Let's go through line metric meters, scales, balance, correlation lines of track centers. Let's go into sonar. Split lines in 1/3 line screen into 4 lines of 6, 6 over 8 over 12 over pi. Process calculation, 1 center, 1 surface, 1 traction, 1 division, 1 line setting, and a 40 line split lines of high center interference of a tunnel and a rotor, and a line condition setting to its port open stargate that opens all signals and modification. Done by equation. All right. Complicated, isn't it, when you draw these things, right? Because it's already been drawn. All right. So I'm just showing you how powerful it is when you start to understand what's going on with your settings, to understand how to use your schematics, your data, your highways, in line position locations of platforms of communication, right? So start with that. Look at the time frame, okay? Look at the box frame. Look at the triangulation frame. So you can set position locations in the setting. You can set lines of live, equal line correlations. You can add 14 lines of cycles. That changes lines of 38. 38 add lines of 14 volume equals lines of 3. Okay, that's 2 lines of panels, routers and routers into solar sail and traction. Correlates to the sun, in line positions, bringing it together through yin and yang, a process communication lines infinity 8 and travel. Points lines of graph, center correlates of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, in line position location of energetic dome screen calculation. That equation. So there's so many things you can do with all looking at live through time frame. Time frame, no frame, all frame, right? It all is in position locations. But staying in the nothingness equals lines equals everything. Okay? Nothing equals the everything. Of everything equals the showing of all calculation, right? Systematical lines of knowing, line condition setting of everything in calculations to anything interaction. All right, process position lines of center is all of us how you set up the binary. This reiterates the communication to its position of its program. This allocates timeframes and center location settings to operation surface that puts everything in navigation screen lines adaptations and zero gravity in calculation. Process calculation lines of zeros. Okay, let's go through line communication setting to a primer. 2 panels correlation. Now we've got net lines, but now it's going to get tricky because you guys are going to higher levels of tracker lines. So you have direct lines of 1, 1, track location 1, 1. There's 1 position. Then you go to 1, 1. Oh, we got 2, 1 interactions. Okay. All right. Remember, this is all primary, complicated stuff. 1, 1, data files, correlation of 2, 2, track lines go. Let's go 1, 3. 0, 0, let's go through 1, 4, and position 0, 1. Track position lines, high calculation lines is 0, 0. Let's go into 1 line 0 with point lines and setting. Once you get into decimal points, it gets a lot more complicated because you're adding point lines of graph and communication lines of center, split line denominator, track location. Process calculation lines of 1 setting, 2 panels. Process calculation 1 centers of 2 line rotation. Process communication lines of 2 tractions, 2 line division, 2 line centers, 2 operations, 1 line cycle, 3 line communications, 3 line centers high interference, 0 gravity, line center, line in position, 0, 1 attractions, process calculation. I'm showing you how to create a data highway. 0 correlation all through numbers through all primers. 0 lines, ground line, surface, line condition 1, 2, track line positions. 0 correlation of grounds, operations, surface, and travel. Okay. Now we finish up the correlation lines and direct signals and position a panel that opens up the magnetic highway and line condition setting of travel and position of rotors and routers. Position process lines in 1 cycle, 1 center, 1 surface, 1 traction, 1 division. That's a highway, right? All through a primer. Okay. Center core system is all lines. They're always going to have grounds, powers, and amperes. So let's get line signal location of graphs, center core system, and line position of programming calculation. Okay. Now we're going through anomalies and 3 lines of communication. Cross and signals. Okay. X marks the spot. Direct lines of cycles, direct line of centers, line in and rotation, surface and traction. All right. Gets complicated. Now we go through line screens. We over across the spring lines and green lines of high center interference. Begin position lines of travel at 1/60,000 setting. Process green lines high center interference. We come into the blue line cycles in 1 center of operation surface. Process calculates line direct signals. We come into red line screen that puts all process communication. Process calculates line screen high interference. We come into pink lines of center and position of progress. Calculates lines of progression comes in line calculation. The white line signals and 1 rotation surface and traction. Let's take that out through equation. Okay, over crosses line signal, cross reference and line calculation setting position of this program. Brings everything out through indication and everything else on standby and traction all through highway. Powerful stuff, isn't it? It's amazing, right? So constantly find a way at everything you see, change it into spaceless and time, a timeless of space. Always find a way to use that and provisionize the 5 cycles because you have 5 elements to work with. So you don't always have to look at the time frame and direct. You can go redirect. Okay, so what this does is it changes time frame. So instead of going from in position lines of setting of 10, 2, 2, 4, you're putting your positions of direct now. It's not redirect. So all you're doing is you're flipping the switch. Okay, so flipping the switch. So you get direct and then you got redirect, right? Okay, so let's go through time center. That's how you're able to go through 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and then it goes back 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, back to 16, right? You have to freeze time. All right, so setting position track lines, high center calculation settings. So you got 42 line cycles. Okay, equals lines of high center interference. That's 43 line rotation. Okay, that's position lines of high center interference of box 1, 2, 3, 4, and split line of anomaly. Sets communication lines center interference. We change communication lines at 2 line, add lines of set lines of 3 line communication setting, and 5 generation screen lines adaptation. Process calculation high center location setting puts all levels of operation cycles. So in that position locations, this is what we do through tractions, right? All right, so this is going line, wait till it gets line center location of 44. We're going to go line position location of travels and point lines of graph. All right, so wait till it gets to 5, it correlation lines of 3, sets communication lines of 3, and it set lines of 43. So 43 is going back, and 5 is going forward in traction. Okay, so this is direct, and this is redirect. Okay, this is going forward, and this is going back. Okay, so it's just the opposite system all through acceleration. Changing communication lines of atoms, one going this way and one going the other way, right? Brings it together, opens up the cycles, up position of its portal into a plasmazine wall. Process of communication setting puts all of the temperatures and screen lines adaptations of travels, platforms of communication line settings going forward in a 45-degree angle and set location. Okay? Woo! That's going way over my head. All right? I'm just showing you so many lines of direct and redirect. All right? So that's what it is. I showed you exactly how to get in position, how you basically freeze time. You have to take the one signal. Let's go through graph calculation lines of 44 tractions. Remember the singularity, right? Singularity is, there's a singularity, right? So we had four line settings, and we had line condition of four lines. So we bring the 4 up in position in traction. So it's 4, 4, 5. There is the binary. through the singularity, right? 4, 4, 5, 4, right? 4 line signals, 1, 2, 3 panels, travels, right? So that's 3 equals lines of 4 equals lines of pi interaction, okay? So add the 4 lines of binary, line condition setting to its position of its process, downshift cross lines calculations, 4 lines of position lines of travels, 4 line communicate cross line reference of travels, and 5 indicate lines sending to solar sails and rotation surface and track location and measure and scale communication of balance. Very complicated stuff, all through solar sail, right? So I'm just showing you exactly how you go direct and redirect in signals, how you can go in position locations, freezing time, editing time. Editing time frame is understanding how to direct and redirect location northwest, south, and east. Process communication is going data highways this way, cross-line signals going this way, cross-line this way, cross-line this way, and cross-line this way, interaction, right? So time frames of 4, that's calculated. This is the timelines of clock location settings of 5, 5 set locations of 5, high correlation lines of 7, and track locations. So we got 4 lines of cycles. No, we got line communication setting, 46 lines of measure. Okay, there's the binary, and there's the singularity. Singularity of 4 and 600 line rotation is track location of equals lines of binary, equals lines of dx, and line rotation surface and travel. Okay, process communication lines of center, process communication lines of center, process communication lines of grounds of center and travel. Comes into the pyramid in rotation surface and travel. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? But it's complicated, right? Because you don't understand time frame. So remember I told you about you can come into trimester line communications of quasars, so you can try factors and position box frames of 3, and it doesn't matter where it is in track location to its system, and all line communication to its position of its program and calculation modification. So it doesn't matter. Whatever order it comes in, you automatically win, right? So that's why, because if you don't box the frame in position, it's an open panel that opens up the sequence of travel, a mechanism line calculates setting position operation. Travel lines of 1, 2, get in the way in line cell location of escape and line position. Process communication lines of grounds in position location grid that overlines the signals and location setting. Process communication lines energetic dome screens, high center interference, in position of process, in position location setting operation. Okay, done by equation. Okay. All right, so everything I do is a hologram. Everything I do is a hologram. Okay, everything is position as a hologram. Everything is data of a hologram. Everything is information of a solar sail of a hologram. You guys have to get out of your direct and redirect of everything, the titles and labels that comes to you, information location, the screen lines adaptation, your alphabetical line screen, high adaptation lines of cycles, generate screen location to a system, position operation calculations, directing line modification, right? So I know there's a lot going on, right? So I don't want anybody to get confused. If you have any questions or comments, it's done afterward cycles. All right, so you got 26 letters, all right, in the alphabet, 26 equals location alphabet, right? But in position of dimensional line space, you have 0. See how it works? 0. So you're not working with 26 letters anymore, right? You're just working with 0, right? The equal line correlation lines at all line centers of 2 lines of 6 location of travel. Cross-line signals, cross-referencing, location settings, all lines of high center location system in position of dimensional line screen into all of location grid. The platform is 1, 2, and 3 set location. See how easy that is to do? All through geometric, all through design, all through geographical, all through DX lines of travel and rotation surface. You see the solar sail, right? Let's bring it into the equation. All right, here's the solar sail. You can see the formation. Let's bring it into more bold so you can really see the formation. It outlines its communications, right? Process calculation lines, direct lines of communication, travels line rotation surface. Done by equation. So that's what you guys have to do. You know, there's a lot going on in tractions, all application of time frames, time lock, time sequence, time editing, space lines, all line modifications, screen adaptation lines, and surface applications, all of the travel position point graph communication, right? How's everybody doing so far? So you have to really understand how to use your manifest. Obviously, there's going to be Q&A after this because you guys are going to get more confused. So confusion is not there, right? Because it's all set position of result. All right? So there's no equal line correlation. It's a box. It's a platform. It's a portal. And it's a Stargate. Okay? That's all it is. Boom. Now, That's infinity lines of square roots, lines, square lines, screens, high adaptations into geometric lines, high verifications, lines, geological, geographical, and geometrical line screens. But you have to stand the platforms of communication setting with position to process lines of grounds, powers, and atmospheric locations to your space anomaly. Okay, that's what the equal line center is. Platforms, square roots, circulations, and stargates. Portals, square lines, high center interference, square pi, platform communication lines, circulation ground centers, crop circle design lines into Stargate measure. Okay, that's what the equal line is. That's a 4-line provision. Now, everything has an infinity line screen and adaptation lines of surface. The position lines of applications because the team's going to higher levels of chakras. Your 1 signals are no longer GOD, they're infinity. Okay? So you have to really register that now. You have to get out of time lock and time frames and stop seeing things as time. Because there is no time. Because you say there's no time. Now that changes everything. It changes your line settings. It changes your metric meters. It changes your scales. It changes your frequency patterns. It changes your operation line cycles. It changes your cortex. It changes your syntax. It changes your clocking system. It changes all of the graphs. It changes everything, your mappings. In seconds, minutes, and hours. I just showed you exactly what I can do through time frame. And everybody sees that correlations where you can add 16 lines of screens. Let's go through 14 tractions. Sets calculation lines in 15 line setting. Sets communication lines at all line position of 16. You think 16 is going up? No, 16 is going down. See? I can do whatever I want. Just because it's 16 doesn't mean it's going to be 17. 16 is going to be 20,000. Gotcha. Who says it has to be 17? Who said it has to be 18 to go up? No, I say what it is. All right, so that's confusing in your own system because you see it as an optical illusion. But you understand how to process this and all of how it becomes your information location of balance. Balance in the grounds, balance in the powers, and balance in the atmosphere lines of your highways and track location at 3 settings. That puts you in a position lines of prophecy, ecophacy, location setting, or travels on point lines of graphs. How to see the central core system of the grounds, powers, and the atmospheres of you through your data highways or your mega highway communication setting to travel. That's it, through equation. All right. That's what you have to come into. So the team's now working with infinitive cycles. Center core system line condition setting. Okay, so they're no longer in GOD. All right. Because they're reaching lines of communications. Once you reach 6,000 lines of 44 track position, all we do now is you set up your projections or your sun and your moon and position this calculation. That's it, done. They just high volume your settings. So you set position of body comes in more of the center. Your mind comes more in the center. Operation surface of yin and yang. Whoa, look at that. Boom. All right, so that's what's next. Next has already happened. You get up in the morning, it's not happening, position traveling, because it's already happened, right? Like again with tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. You know why tomorrow never comes? Because it's always here. Because there is no tomorrow. Because it's always here. So you're not living a day. Okay? You're not living the same day. Because you already lived it. Okay? So once you understand that, life gets a lot more easier to understand what's going on with you through remotes, right? Track provision lines of cycles. What are we at? 13 to 3, right? So I am in command, but I also have to know, in fact, that the communication of its computer is also in its own command. You've got to build a collaboration, a partnership, not a forcibly controlling system, knowing a control system. Get into the balance, get into the grounds, get into the powers, get into the highways, get in your 5 elements, because everything you see around you also has that too in its geometric operation of its design. But the team has to send more lines of formations because what's coming in your position of projection of all calculations, screen lines, and how you see in that formation. Let's go in profile correlations. Track calculation lines. This is you and travel. Point lines of graph and center calculations. Boom. That's all it is. Seen through all angles and line communication. Okay, position of the sun, position of the moon. Projector of projection. Okay, signifies line settings of pi, line communication of clocking line centers of center operation, yin and yang of process communications, figure 8 of line communication of point lines of graph communication settings, process communication lines of your platforms of communications, ground centers operation surface of platform communication lines at a 45-degree angle line communication setting. Done by equation, right? So much I've given you all through platform. How to cross-line signals, cross-reference platforms. This is not a box. This is a platform and a 2-line angle. See, I put, 3-line. Cross line. See, it's doing, 6-line. Correlation set. Center line, 8-line. 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. So everything I do is all done. Okay? There's nothing I'm drawing that you don't already know. Okay? Because they're processing a lot faster now. You guys are coming into an infinity of numbers, letters, shapes, and symbols. So good luck with that. All you got to do is keep your balanced communication settings and travels. 1 equals lines of intelligence settings. Equals lines highest standard interference and I-line screen and awareness and position of travel lines, points lines of graph into its memory, into mind and collaboration. Congratulations. So once you reach the 6044, you're good to go through line times measure, and then we get you set up in your projector of your projections. All right, that's it. We're done. I know it's a lot going on in travel, right? So basically, you have any questions or comments, let me know. See you in 5. Adios.